one of the good things from this whole situation and that you have to be only in your local area is I actually started discovering shops in my local area I didn't know they existed,
Hmm.
and I found really really good shop with like food from like different parts of the world. It's mainly Mediterranean food, but they also have some Polish food over there. However, the highlight of it, there's two highlights of this shop. One, they have sunflower seeds, which I love to eat, like salted, roasted, salted sunflower seeds.
I
I'm
remember you
addicted.
eating those.
You remember it,
Yeah,
yeah?
yeah, yeah. Because I remember referring to Ace Ventura, the scene in
Yeah.
the first Ace Ventura movie where he's eating the sunflower seeds, putting them on the table.
And then my second highlight from that shop, which is actually like number one, is baklava. Have you ever had baklava?
Yeah, you give me baklava, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah, it
did.
was.
I
Yeah.
think baklava in this shop. They have like their own bakery, and it's like the best baklava I've had. And I've had
Ah.
it in like in Turkey. I've had it in Greece, in Albania as well,
Uh huh.
in Kosovo actually. And that was pretty good baklava. But this one is just perfect. It's so moist with honey, and it's just like falling apart in your mouth. I'm
Hmm.
just in love with it. I think this is my highlight for the whole lockdown. That I have to kind of look for shops locally, and I found this beautiful shop in my area. Did you find anything like in your area you want to
I,
share?
I didn't find anything, but what was pretty cool was that a load of like the smaller stores, be it like restaurants or coffee shops or bakeries, a lot of them were very able to quickly adjust to the situation and started doing things like delivering stuff from home. This was pretty common in a lot of places, but it did also force me to try out a few other places and get food ordered from other places. Or there's an amazing bakery in Belfast called French Village, and usually you would have to go to French Village on like a Saturday morning, and it would be pretty busy, and you'd have to kind of queue and wait and stuff like that. But they started doing like delivering food from home, or to home, sorry. Likewise with a coffee shop that I go to called Established. Every They used to do these amazing. They still do them actually. I don't know why I said used to. They still do these amazing cinnamon rolls. And they came up with a way of doing like bake at home cinnamon rolls. So they would just deliver the cinnamon like roll in a foil tray to you with like cinnamon kind of drizzle in a little tub, and then you just heat it in the oven and drizzle it over the top, and it came with like a bag of their coffee, or a coffee if you chose to do pickup at the time. But stuff like that was really really cool. And it is somewhat depressing that as things have started to reopen, like if you walk through any sort of like city center place, despite everybody being very much support local for the past few months, we got to look after our local stores and our local coffee shops and cafes and restaurants, because they're going to be hit the hardest. They don't have that multinational money behind them to keep them afloat. And that was amazing, but it seems to be that as soon as we've kind of emerged from lockdown, you walk through a city center now and it's just like queues of people waiting outside Starbucks and near Cafe Nero or Costa, and it's kind of upsetting to see, because this is probably the time now is when these small independent places are going to suffer, because everyone supported them for 3 months, and now that support is going to dwindle in many cases. So they're probably actually going to find it even harder through the summer months than because they technically can't reopen yet here. A lot of them, like they can maybe do like takeaway only, but they certainly can't do sit-in for meals and things like that. So they're going to really struggle, I think, now that the sort of overall support is going to kind of dwindle, I feel, as people just go back to a lot of their old habits. There's a
Maybe people will just realize that that coffee they had from this international chain actually is not that good anymore, and the
yeah.
coffee they had with this really small shop, with passion, delivered with passion, and with quality, it's gonna be much better. I don't know. I'm trying to look at the positive side, but yeah, as you're absolutely right. Big brands opening, and we see queues of people waiting outside. Topshop, or like big chains just to buy, I don't know, £2 T-shirt. Just don't get it.
Yeah. Well, everyone has their needs, and that's totally fine. But like when it comes to the smaller food places, I would just like to see people maintain the support for them that they showed throughout the last few months. Likewise with the NHS. I know we've stopped clapping, and I know you and I have spoke about clapping before, but I just really hope that going forward, people just don't forget that, we weren't just clapping as like a nice gesture. Like the whole point in the clap was that we were supporting these people, what they were, the risk that they were putting themselves at. But the risk doesn't really stop. It certainly hasn't stopped because we've stopped clapping, and it certainly hasn't stopped because our numbers have fallen. There still are people working in intensive care units. There still are people that have to go to work in hospitals where there is more likely to be disease and infection. So I don't know if you've seen it today, but one of the first debates back in Parliament today was one around whether health and social care workers would get a pay raise. Now, I know the terminology is to debate, but I'm not really sure why you would call this one a debate. You would think that this isn't really up for debate, particularly at the moment. But rather disappointingly, only 20 MPs actually showed up to even discuss it, which really, I think, shows the highlight of how much all of the sort of charades or whatever they've been doing over the past few months really didn't mean very much at all. It was just scoring political points, as it always is. But
yeah, I think people will start showing true faces. Whatever was it where they were talking about, during the coronavirus, whether it was just to kind of show off, or was it actually real passion and support for those people. I'm with you. Like, we should support local places all the time, local stores. I promise myself to just do shopping locally as much as I can. Every week I go to my favorite bakery, favorite shop, and there's always people there, and they come and they wait in the queue to get this baklava, and I just love it. And they always have fresh veg, and you can like pick fresh fruit or herbs. Oh, I just love going there. I always find an excuse that I'm run out of something. I need to go to the shop and buy something. And the same with the workers. They should get some recognition more than clapping from us. Like however nice that was, we should support them. We should also start supporting. I want to start supporting cinemas. I don't know. We're gonna talk about it probably in a few minutes when we move on to the show. But who knows what actually this is gonna look like.
I was just thinking to myself, though, like, here I am preaching about supporting like local and independent, and then when we switched to talking about movies, I'm like, yeah, man, Avengers. Have you ever seen Avengers though? It's real good. Like, you should go check out the Avengers films. And no, I don't really want to watch this art house movie, Rado. It doesn't sound very interesting to me.
It sounds like you. Conor, I forced you to watch so many movies, so many art house movies. I think you did your quota for a year.
I have passed it long ago, trust me.
You ready?
I was born ready.
Hello and welcome to the Blockbusters, a podcast about the wonderful world of cinema and TV, about the movies we love, no matter how big, no matter how small. My name is Rado. I'm here with Conor Boyle to talk about movies, TV series, and some news. We also gonna be talking about the best of 2020 so far, which is not related to the worst things that happened, but the best of films and TV shows. Hi, Conor.
Hello. We made it past episode 10, Rado. They thought it wasn't possible, but here we are.
Yeah, I think we are technically on episode 12. Technically,
yeah.
Yeah, but this is the episode number 11 because we, at some point, we just split one episode in half because we like to ramble quite a lot on some things.
Yes.
We promise there won't be too much rambling today, but who knows what's going to happen.
It's not a promise at all.
So,
That's the complete opposite of a promise.
yeah, this is so when we discuss what's going to happen during the episode, there will be always there's a message. It's going to be a quick one.
Yeah, every single week. Yeah, this is.
Yeah,
we'll just do a quick one tonight, sure.
Yeah, and 2 hours later, we're still here. Okay, so let's move on. Let's start with the very sad news. Joel Schumacher, director, has passed away at the age of 80. He was battling cancer. He will be remembered forever as a director of films like Lost Boys, St. Elmo's Fire, Falling Down, The Client, Phantom of the Opera, and of course 2 Batman films from the 90s. And he will be remembered as a person who had between 10 and 20,000 of sexual partners in his life. That's what he said in his interview last year. He had amazing life, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I wanted to ask you, do you have your favorite films of Joel Schumacher? I know that, you know, people talk about Batman and Robin being the worst movie, like worst comic movie ever made, but I think there are worse movies than this, like Fantastic Four, for example. Do you have your list of like favorite films, or maybe one favorite film you remember?
So I haven't seen it in a long time, but I did like The Lost Boys when I watched it. I have to give a shout out to Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, because although those movies are ghastly films in every sense of the word, I was let's see here, I was 4 when Batman Forever came out, and I was 6 when Batman and Robin came out. And they kind of, for me, followed being really young and watching Batman the Animated Cartoon. I used to have that when I was on VHS when I was very, very young. And then the first sort of time that I seen Batman on like a movie screen on film was Joel Schumacher's movie. So as like a 7 and 8-year-old boy, all of the terrible stuff didn't really matter. I didn't care.
Yeah.
It was just cool to see Batman and a Batmobile and stuff like that. And obviously then as you started to get older and you watch them, you're like, oh my God, what on earth was going on here? Like, you know, but as a kid, I just seeing Batman on screen with a Batmobile and having he had like an ice suit in one of them. It was so bad, but it was so cool when I was a kid. And I did see something recently where like a short story about him, where on the set apparently of these movies, he used to always like direct the actors by telling them like, remember at the end of all of this, you're in a cartoon. Like that is how he was directing them, which through that lens actually does add a little bit of an interesting element to these movies. I think, like, you know, they are very deliberate in their sort of ridiculousness, because in his mind he was trying to make a live action cartoon. I think that it doesn't make them good, but I think it's an interesting way to look at them. And just finally, for me to finish, I also am going to give a shout out to probably my favorite of his movies out of the ones that I've seen, which is 2002's Phone Booth.
I love that film.
With Colin Farrell. I have not seen this movie in a long time, but when I was looking through Joel Schumacher's filmography, I spotted it, and I just remember, I think I remember renting it on DVD probably, and watching it with my parents, and just being like enamored by it. It was so tense, I just couldn't believe it. And I remember being so like frustrated with who the voice of the sniper was, because remember he used to his phone. Yeah. And it was
Kiefer Sutherland.
It was Kiefer Sutherland. Yeah,
and this was at the time when he was super popular with 24.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, I loved it. I think I agree with you. I love that film.
Yeah, that was a good movie.
I have very warm feelings towards Batman Forever. I went to watch it when I was, I think, in high school, or maybe in like end of primary school or something.
Mm-hmm.
I think end of primary school actually.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was probably about 15. I don't remember exactly 15, 14. So I went with two of my friends for a very early screening of that film into the cinema, and there was just three of us, and the person who was like selling us the tickets, she said, "Oh, we can only screen the film if there's four people." So we were three of us were just like, we didn't have any extra money, like, we're kids. You just probably took some money from our parents, and we were just standing there and waiting. And there's one person, and we managed to go into the theater and watch the movie. It was like probably 12 o'clock or like 1 o'clock, like very like during the day screening, and we were so happy like just to watch that film. I remember loving the U2 song "Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me." That was promoting that film. I still love that song. I don't know. I have something for U2 in general. I know there's lots of haters of Bono and stuff like that, but yeah, and I like that film. I mean, the Batman and Robin isn't that great, but you have to remember, like, Joel Schumacher was coming from. His background was costume designer, so all his films, like, they have a look, a very specific look.
Yeah.
There's lots of neon lightning. There is also lots of crazy colors in there, and they have very like a feel for the era. Like, they are very 80s, like the Lost Boys, or very 90s, like the Batman films, or other stuff like The Client, for example. But my favorite is the Michael Douglas film with Michael Douglas. The Falling Down, and that was 1993, and Michael Douglas was completely different in that film than like you've ever seen him before. He plays this character that is essentially super like tense, and he's disappointed, he's bitter, and he just like he at the beginning gets stuck in the traffic, and then he essentially just takes out his frustration on whoever he sees. And it's super tense film. I love this film. It's one of like my favorite films of probably 90s,
Hi, can I help you?
Yes, I'd like a ham and cheese omelet and more wham fries.
I'm sorry, we stopped serving breakfast, but we are on the lunch menu now.
But I want breakfast.
Well, you can't have it. We're not serving it.
So you said. Is that the manager?
Yeah,
Could I speak to him, please?
sure. Rick, there's a customer that would like to speak with you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, I'd like some breakfast.
We stopped serving breakfast.
I know you stopped serving breakfast, Rick. Sheila told me you stopped serving breakfast. Why am I calling you by your first names? I don't even know who you are. I still call my boss Mister. I worked for him for 7.5 years, but I walk in here all of a sudden, total stranger, and I'm calling you Rick and Sheila like we're in some kind of AA meeting. I don't want to be your buddy, Rick. I just want a little breakfast.
Well, you can call me Miss Folsom if you want to.
Sheila, we stopped serving breakfast at 11:30.
Rick, have you ever heard the expression, the customer is always right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, here I am, the customer.
Joel Schumacher, he had some misfires, but he had some really good films, and I hope he's gonna be remembered for that, for all those movies.
I have some breaking news actually on the topic of Batman.
Go for it.
Just seems to be breaking right this very second. And no, I can't find a quote skimming through the article, but I'll just read the headline. Michael Keaton will appear in the Batman costume in The Flash.
Oh,
Can you
yes.
believe it, Rado? It's happening. I can't believe it. That is
Essentially,
awesome.
Michael Keaton will be recreating the role of Batman. It's like he was in this movie called Birdman when he was playing the theater actor who had his like past, and then people approached him, "Will you be Birdman again?" Obviously, that was a reference to him being a Batman. So he's going to be doing that. And that's fantastic. I think that's great. I think, he's such an iconic actor, Michael Keaton. He's been in so many great films recently that, yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I'm so excited to hear this, because apparently, by the looks of it, it's going to still be set in the DCEU, and he's going to replace Ben Affleck as an older, like, mentor Bruce Wayne. But I can't wait to see how that is going to pan out, for better or worse. I think just be really cool to see Michael Keaton get back into the suit again. And I also feel like Michael Keaton has a good level of self-awareness. Like you said, you like doing Birdman and even doing Spider-Man. He has like a good sense of like, he gets it, you know, he's in on the sort of like the 80s joke and stuff like that there. But he's also aware that he's a good actor and these are good roles. So I'm very interested to see how this will turn out.
Let's do a very quick segue to another kind of Batman-related thing. So obviously Christopher Nolan, who directed how many? 3 Batman movies, is now we're expecting his film Tenet to come to the cinemas. We were talking about it last week.
Rado, we've been talking about this for like 2 months now.
At least.
Like
so last week we said that's gonna be the movie's gonna be postponed until July 31st. Now it's been postponed again another 2 weeks. This is August 12th as a release date. Also Inception, that was meant to be screened in the cinemas in the original Tenet day, July 17th, is going to be shown on July 31st. So right now we have a very first film that's coming, like a big blockbuster to the cinemas, is still Mulan, Disney's Mulan. We will see what will happen, whether July 24th is going to be that day. I wanted to quickly talk about you because there was so many information about like how the cinema is going to be opening, and you sent me an article about petition of Cineworld staff that they want to have all the people who come to the cinema as a mandatory to wear a face mask, and that's a concern. You know, we are start seeing spikes again in coronavirus in different parts of the world. I don't want to say it's because of the going to the cinema. I don't think cinemas actually open properly.
No,
but if people who go to shop have to wear a mask, why wouldn't you wear a mask in the cinema when there is people around you? I know it's not super comfortable, and you know, if you're wearing glasses like me, you know, they'll be probably a little bit foggy, but it's absolutely like silly not to have a face mask in the public space like that.
Obviously, the news changes on an almost daily basis around like what is the appropriate action to take for health. But I feel like the general consensus seems to be now that, you know, social distancing and wearing a face mask are the 2 strongest and easiest things that we can apply to everyday life that will allow things to return to normal in some capacity and also maintain safety. And it is baffling to me that cinema chains are seemingly trying to go out of their way to say no to this. Now, I understand, like, many of them are running low on cash. Like, it has been a very, very tough time, and looking forward, it doesn't appear to be getting any better for them. But how far are they willing to risk their staff's lives and also the people who come to the cinema over just simply not saying, hey, wear a mask? You know, I feel like people will be okay with it. Maybe not in some parts of the world, but in most parts of the world, I feel like people will be okay if you ask them to wear a mask.
Yeah, I think there will be an odd person who will say, I don't want to do it, but I think it's better to actually impose it and suggest it rather than rely on people out of their own will to, oh, if you want to, you can wear it. No, I say it's mandatory to wear a mask, and then maybe just to have a discussion with someone, because I'm just afraid that, you know, however I want cinemas back, I want the business to go back, because obviously everyone's kind of investing money in that, and if we don't start kind of going back on track, it will be really difficult for a lot of people. But we shouldn't be paying the price of like risking someone's health and someone's life. This is not so important. I think if you take all the measures, we can do it. You know, if people in like Asia, they can actually wear masks and they do it. They did it long before we started doing it in Europe. I'm sure we can, adjust to it. Right now, it's not the situation that we had at the very beginning of the pandemic, that we could not even buy masks. I had to ask my parents to send me some masks from Poland because there was no mask available. Right now, I go to, local shop or go to even supermarket and I can buy the disposable masks or, hand gel. So that's all doable. I think we just need to be a little bit more honest about it. There is no hiding from what's out there. It's still there. It's not going to go away until we actually just do something together.
A friend of mine sent me an image that was a pretty good marketing idea. In the Tenet trailer, you can see them sometimes breathing through these masks, which obviously have some part to play in it. They're kind of like oxygen masks. If maybe the best solution here is for the cinema to like merchandise those. Like, hey, like you don't have a mask, don't worry about it. We've got these like limited edition Tenet masks that you can buy.
You can buy with popcorn.
Yeah, you buy your popcorn, buy a large combo, get a big old Coke, because of course, like, why else would you go to the cinema if you're going to get a big Coke and a big popcorn? And we'll give you one of these little Tenet masks along with it as well, that you can just pop onto your face, and it has a little straw compartment or something there too, if you just be able to drink.
You're surprising me. I mean, your colleague and you should go into business, into kind of merchandising that. That is fantastic. One kind of piece of news that brings me joy is actually I found that there is a film festival that started in the world somewhere. It's actually in Taipei. So Taipei Film Festival is taking place. It's actually a live event rather than, this online event. So there are people who buying tickets and it's quite popular. Everything is like all the measurements preventing transmitting the COVID-19 are in place, so people are wearing masks, the temperature is being measured, and that's fantastic. I mean, the only other thing, kind of minor thing, is there is no international guests there, but the first festival actually started, and that's great. In the same time, I can just quickly mention that we had Cannes Market, so the Marché du Film has been taking place for the last week. So there was a lot of news about like who bought what movie is being sold to whom. So the business is actually, people are really keen to go back, like into business. But I think that's it about the news, unless you have something that's came up.
No, I don't think so.
I wanted to talk about some things we've been watching, but apparently you've not been watching anything because you've been playing the Last of Us Part 2.
I have, yeah. I'll talk about it next week.
How is it going?
Oh my God, Rado. I don't want to say too much, as I will speak to you about it next week, but I general consensus right now is I don't think it is fair. Even, I know you mentioned last week, like God of War and stuff like that. I do not think it is fair to categorize The Last of Us with other games.
Is that bad, right?
It is so, the attention to detail, the performances, the soundtrack, the animation, the lighting, the graphics, the environments are all so perfectly crafted. Like, they've been making this game for like 7 years now. And you can tell that it is 7 years of a labor of love that has went into this game for them. So it has, like, I was very nervous that I would start playing it and it wouldn't live up to my expectations because I was so excited for it, and I have such a soft spot and an appreciation of the first game that I thought, I won't be sad if this is as good as the first game. That would be great. But I honestly don't think that there is any other games being made right now that are on the level of The Last of Us Part 2. But I'll talk about it more next week when I've fully finished it and completed it.
So you left me on a spot here because my list of things I've been watching is kind of long, but I'll try to make it as short for everyone as possible. But there's so many interesting things I came across through last week. So What We Do in the Shadows Series 2 has dropped on BBC iPlayer, which I really like. Series 1. I love the film, the original film, co-directed by Taika Waititi, and I've always been afraid that it's gonna be like kind of like the worst version of the movie, but actually it stands on its own legs very firmly. It is extremely funny. It is very absurd. I love the characters. I love the humor in it. I love the cheekiness of it, the running jokes. I could just recommend it to anyone who loved the movie. It is available right now on BBC iPlayer. Have you watched the series or the movie?
I've seen the movie, but I have not seen the TV show at all. Once I seen that Taika wasn't involved, I think that dampened it for me. But you are piquing my interest, and
it is fantastic.
I might go back.
It is
and
fantastic.
Watch it,
It's definitely worth giving it a shot because, I was going there like you, like I'm probably not gonna like it, but after 3 or 4 episodes, you kind of sink into this world, and it's so watchable. It's so enjoyable. I watched it in like a few days over the weekend actually. The next thing I've watched just recently was the Salisbury Poisonings on BBC. This is a 3-part drama based on the actual event that happened in 2018. I'm not sure if you remember that. There was the poisoning of the former Russian spy in Salisbury in England.
Yeah.
And this is a kind of reconstruction of actually what happened, not to the people like the Russian former spy, but actually what happened in this city and about people involved in there, like real characters. It's super fascinating. So it's not very even. There is the first episode, which I loved because it's a procedural drama. So, okay, we've got people like suddenly falling ill. What's happening to them? No one knows. Like, oh, maybe it's some sort of poisoning? Where from? So they get this person from London and she needs to kind of start going because they think at the beginning it's polonium, but kind of radiation poisoning. It turns out to be something much, much worse. So the first episode is just incredibly tense. Second episode isn't that great. The third episode kind of took me back again and got me interested in it. But it's got fantastic performance. It's a BBC production. There is not a false note in there from the production side. It's really, really, really good. I would recommend it to anyone. It's only 3 episodes, and it reminded me of like in the best moments of Chernobyl, of that kind of situation, when people are trying to deal with something that it's kind of bigger than them, and people need to be involved from the government, people from the police, people from like local people. They want to know the answers. It's super tense, and also reminds me a little bit of the whole situation we have with the coronavirus, of like how do you live in a world when because the thing they're dealing with, it's so contagious. They don't know where it is right now. So how do you behave? Do you tell people everything is safe, or is it not? It's super timely. I think this is the one of the TV shows that drops in a very good time. Not only talking about like a real event that's happened not like 2 years ago, but also about like our mentality of like, oh, we want to be safe. We want to know what's happening. We want to go back to our lives, but how do we deal with it? So I recommend it. It's the Salisbury Poisonings. It's on BBC. I will quickly throw a few films I've refreshed. Mad Max Fury Road, still the greatest action film of last decade. I just love rewatching this film.
Yeah, I bought this on iTunes recently to watch on my big TV.
Yeah, 4K.
It's
Dolby
a 4K
or whatever.
Yeah, look great.
Yeah, incredible. I was actually at the not the world premiere, but international premiere in Cannes, and I watched it there. I've never seen people reacting to a film like they react to this film. Like critics essentially clapping, cheering. I love that film. I also watched Game Night. You probably remember that. Have you seen Game Night with Jason Bateman?
Jason Bateman, that was good fun. Yeah,
very, very entertaining, fun film. That's available right now on Amazon Prime. I also watched Hoop Dreams. So this is a documentary about basketball set in the early 90s. So it's got this the Last Dance vibe. Actually, it follows the story of two kids from Chicago that, you know, they are from black neighborhoods. They don't have wealthy families, but they want to make career in the NBA, and it shows how difficult it is. Interesting, super interesting documentary. I stumbled it across on MUBI. And there's two interesting films on Amazon as well. They are original, like Amazon Productions. 7500. This is a director of film from Austrian director Patrick Vollaracht, and it's starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and it's about the terrorist plane hijacking. It's super tense. It reminds me a little bit of like we were talking about the phone booth. It takes place in one location, only in the cabin of the pilot cabin. So you see everything from his perspective. Very tense, very interesting. The first hour is superb. And The Vast of Night is probably the kind of last film I will recommend. It's a science fiction film on Amazon Prime, set in the 50s. And it's got little bit of... Have you heard about it?
No, I don't think so.
No, it's one of those releases that kind of lands on Amazon and people don't maybe talk about it as much as they should. But it's got really nice production design and great cinematography. There's a lot of like long shots, tracking shots, and the story is quite interesting as well. So if you have some time, I would definitely recommend that. So today also I started and finished, because I finished work and I was like, oh, what I should watch? Into the Unknown, making of Frozen 2. That's on Disney Plus. And this is a documentary. I've never seen any of the Frozen films in the full length. Like I'm not the audience, but this documentary shows how the film was made. So last year of the making of, a little bit like with The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
But it's not been cut into like, oh, this is about special effects, this is about this. This is like a linear story of, okay, we got 11 months till the world premiere, what we need to work on. And there is actually super exciting stuff happening. Like, I didn't know that people who work as an animators on those films, they work on maybe 20 seconds, 50 seconds, a minute of the movie.
Yeah.
They never see the whole picture. And if they review the film at some point and they say, oh, this stuff we need to cut this, you're like, you spent 3 months doing something and it's going. Like, you can see, like, there's a lot of great stuff in there, like when they record voices, when they record songs, when they work on like different pieces of the movie, how they have to change it. I know that the movie wasn't well received in terms of like the critics, but the movie made so much money. It's like the best like selling animated movie in history. So it's made the most money as an animated movie. But definitely worth to watch if you like behind the scenes documentary. And I know you like them, Conor, because you watch the Mandalorian stuff. If
you've seen any of those corridor videos, like the behind the scenes in the animation, they also do the behind the scenes with like stuntmen and women, and they sometimes talk about that as well, like even more so than like, oh, if you're an animator and you could work for 3 months on a particular piece and then it doesn't even make the movie. With stuntmen and women, like they often find that like you might have to do stunts where you literally get like beat up repeatedly for an entire day. Like you have to jump off this wall over and over and over again, or like jump through this glass or whatever it is, or hang on to this car or get hit by a car, and it just never makes the cut, especially with like martial arts films, you know, where they'll like literally get kicked right in the head and then the scene doesn't even make it. Like that little clip just doesn't even make it. Yeah. Or they replace it with CG at the end of it all anyway. It's like, oh my god. I did not know about it, and I think the more you watch movies and you want to know more about what's happening behind the scenes, documentaries like that, when they actually showing there is some drama when you create something, it's so interesting. So I recommend it to anyone. If you're not even if you're not an
Frozen fan, which I am not, I admit that, but I like seeing the process. I will be just talking quickly about two films that are from Poland right now. They quite popular on the Netflix. One actually broke Netflix almost. The first one is a TV series. So this is this is the second Netflix original production made in Poland. It's called The Woods. This is the mystery thriller based on a novel of the same name by Harlan Coben. Have you heard about Harlan Coben and his novels?
No.
Not me neither. Actually, I don't know that. But so this is an American writer. Just did some research, and yeah, he's popular. So people kind of love his writing. But this was transferred actually to Poland. So this movie takes place in Warsaw. And it is set in 1994 and 2019. So it goes back and forward. There is essentially like a killing that happened in 1994. And the guy who's the main character actually goes back in his kind of mind because something has happened in the present that takes him back there. Very interesting, very good production values. I kind of love that there is so many like Polish actors in there and recognizable actors as well. I even watched a bit an English voiceover of English actors playing it out. It was pretty good actually. It's been in like top 10 for a couple of weeks right now. So if you like crime drama, mystery drama, story is great, interesting, it's kind of dark, and yeah, I recommend it. It's on Netflix and it's The Woods. And the last thing is something I will not recommend to anyone. This is a movie I've actually watched this year in the cinema, because every time the movie, drops in the cinema, especially Polish movie, we would go to watch it. And this is called 365 Days, or you might see 365's DNI, like I said, it's essentially days. And this is a Polish version of the 50 Shades of Grey. It's a Godfather and 50 Shades of Grey in one.
Oh, wow.
This movie on Letterboxd has 1.1 star, and I think that's generous. It's been number one for at least 2 weeks. Scenes from that movie made it to the porn websites. The compilations of the sex scenes actually in that movie made it to porn websites. Yeah. This movie is so wrong on many levels. So this is based on like a trilogy of books written by a woman. I'm super surprised that this is written by a woman, because essentially the story goes, Conor, listen to this. There is a woman, a Polish girl. She goes on a holiday to Italy, and the guy sees her. He kidnaps her, okay? And he imprisons her, and he says to her, you have 365 days to fall in love with me. The guy is extremely hot, okay? The girl is super sexy. And this is the story, essentially, of them together. I'm not gonna spoil anything when I say, yeah, they actually kind of, get together. But this is all wrong in the world of, 2020 we live in, when we want the liberation, feminism and liberation of women. We have a story about a guy essentially kidnapping and trying to rape a woman. And this is I wanted to be talking more about it, but I will just say this. Okay, don't watch this movie. It's just bad. It's just bad. And if you really want to see the sex scenes, go to the porn site and look for it. You'll find it. It's fine. They are not that explicit. That's the one thing. The other thing, in the movie, there are more shopping scenes than actual sex scenes.
Oh my God.
So I think whoever was thinking about writing it, or the novel or the film, they said, okay, so women, what do women like? The women like hot guys from Italy. Yeah? Check. Women like going on holiday. Check. Women like strong guys that have a lot of money. Yeah? Guy has a lot of money, right? He needs to be a little bit mean, but he's lovely as well. So, yeah, that's a check. The girls like shopping experience. Let's put a lot of shopping sequences in there. And they're just, I don't know. The dialogue is horrible. The English accent it's worse than mine. Yeah, this is the big warning. Big warning. I wanted to actually ask you to watch it, but I thought to myself, no, I'm not doing this to you.
Yeah. No, I think I'll be all right, thanks.
Are you lost, baby girl?
Why am I here? I want to get out now.
Afraid this is impossible. You have 365 days. I'll do anything so you can fall in love with me. You will accompany me.
That I'm not going anywhere. But you won't touch me without my permission.
He just wants to take good care of you.
You want me to accept a year-long preparation? I have rights to know what's waiting for me.
If you hit me again,
You will kill me?
now you put down the gun.
Conor, we've got actually one film we wanted to properly review because we watched it both. This is The Five Bloods, and after The Five Bloods, we're gonna put our list, very quick list of the best films of first half of 2020. But let's dive into The Five Bloods, a new movie by Spike Lee. It's available right now on Netflix. It's a big release, I would say.
Yeah.
Normally, that sort of movie would land in a theater. His previous film, Black Klansman, actually premiered in Cannes. It was awarded in Cannes as well. This one, kind of smaller because it's only online, but everyone's talking about it. Can you put it in a few kind of sentences? What is it about?
First of all, I think I should say that I just, while you're talking about it being an online release, like I have on here before, like, criticized some of the direction that Netflix takes, but I have to give them credit as well, because they always seem to have a film right at for like the perfect time, or a documentary or a TV show, right at the perfect time when society is kind of asking for it.
Oh, the pandemic. You mean the pandemic documentary that was released in January?
Yeah. And I think they even had, or were able to very quickly get Contagion onto Netflix as well. Like, just at that time. So a lot of people watched Contagion for the first time through sort of like March time period. But yeah, just obviously a few weeks ago we had the kind of a very significant moment for the Black Lives Matter campaign, and for this movie to have been like locked and loaded and ready to go, it just somehow aligns so perfectly. And it's not, I think Netflix's structure allows them to be like this, the fact that they're willing to give creators an opportunity to make the things that they want to do, and then they can essentially sit on something for as long as they feel like, or maybe until the opportunity arises, and then release it with very little fanfare or minimal marketing, and it can spur up its own marketing based on what is happening around the globe. So that it was kind of amazing timing for this movie to come out, and particularly for it to be from Spike Lee. So essentially what it is that the movie itself is Da Five Bloods. It's four older Vietnam veterans, all black men, go back to Vietnam in search of treasure that they buried when they were doing their tour of Vietnam in the Vietnam War. And there was a fifth one of the Bloods with them at that time, played by T'Challa himself, Mr. Black Panther. Except he is no longer alive, obviously, hence the fact that there's only four of them. And what they're essentially going to do is both find the gold and his remains. They want to bring his remains home, but kind of the undercurrent of it as well is that they're trying to locate this gold that they had buried at the time. And essentially that's the basic plot. That's really all there is to it, and the directions that it goes down then after that are fairly simplistic. It's more about kind of fighting amongst each other and sort of reconciliation, or coming to terms with a lot of things that have been bothering them. So that's really it. I think it's a very simple plot, but I really enjoyed this movie. What did you think?
So this movie is 2 hours 20 minutes or 2 hours 30 minutes long.
Yeah.
So it's quite a long movie.
It is long,
and
I thought.
I don't mind long movies. In general, I can watch a 3-hour movie, 5-hour movie as well, as long as it kind of drags me into the world and it it makes me forget about things. So from the very, very first minute of this film, you know what this movie is like, and you know this Spike Lee is all over it. Like,
Yeah.
it has the footage from the actual protest,
Civil rights marches.
Yeah, you have people talking about like black soldiers in Vietnam, involved in Vietnam. You have
I have a quote from that actually, just because I pulled it from it when I was watching it, because I thought it's almost as if it almost felt in a way that Spike Lee went back and re-edited some of this because it was so appropriate. But yeah, it was, when you take 20 million black men and make them fight all your wars and pick all your cotton, sooner or later their allegiance towards you is going to wear thin. Like, that's one of the opening quotes in the movie, and it just was so like, how could you put this movie out right now? Like, it just seemed like he was able to go back into Netflix and be like, hey, I've got like an extra 10 minutes of footage that I want to clip into it. But I don't think that was the case anyway. I think that was just always there, so it's kind of amazing.
Yeah, if you watch his movies, he always is kind of want to be on time, and he's making the same movie like all over again. It's about people's rights, it's about black people's right, how they're being treated in a different situations, and this is one of them. This is essentially like story that's set in the present, but it takes us to the past. We hear this is like a very interesting like kind of recreation of the radio recordings when
those were amazing.
They kind of do this. So we black soldiers from America, why are you fighting? This is not your war. You're still being treated as slaves. People of Vietnam did not do anything wrong to you. And yeah, it's like coming kind of to terms of that. So I think there's two movies in there, like the movie about the rights of black soldiers, like essentially black Americans fighting in that war, and the kind of what it entails to today. But it also it's trying to be like a kind of 90s action movie at some point.
Oh my god, so much. Yeah.
Which like maybe doesn't work all the time for me. In general, what I think, like, I always have this problem with Spike Lee. Spike Lee tries to cram so much stuff into the film, and is trying to be too didactic. Like, you don't have a doubt about what this movie is about.
No,
every person in this film will have a dialogue, will have a scene when they stare to the camera and the way they say something that's important, and you have to, this is the stuff, this is the important stuff.
Yeah.
And things that would take me out of the movie were like, during the, like, something's happening and there's suddenly like a cut and there's a picture and there's like, oh, this is the explanation, something you will see in a documentary, like why do you do this? Like, okay, I know you want to educate me, but maybe just trust also the audience a little bit more, that they will get this, they will get the whole picture, and maybe not kind of dwell on this specific moment. And I feel like Spike Lee wants to emphasize it so much, he sometimes forgets the bigger picture. That's why this film feels a little bit bloated, I like it when it referred, like, oh, those movies, Rambo movies, and Chuck Norris missing in action. Bullshit. Yeah. It's make me funny, because then this movie actually turns into almost like a Rambo movie at some point, almost like a missing in action, when like suddenly some weird things starts happening and you're like, okay, they just, like, where is this guy? Like, what's the explanation for the big, and it turns into like a big standoff at the end. So Spike Lee tries to deliver something that is didactic, and tries to deliver something that is entertaining. And I don't think everything works together, but it's an interesting film. Like, I'm not gonna say it's not a movie I've seen before. It's a great take on this actual topic, but it didn't work for me on every level. There is a Trump supporter in this film. He plays a very important role. He's black, and when Spike Lee was asked about this, I think he said he did it because he needed some sort of conflict in the group. And I think that this conflict builds in, like, based, like, essentially about the treasure, right? So that's the main stuff. And then he tries to cram in like a political conflict. There is Jean Reno in the movie. He almost is he almost plays Donald Trump in that film.
Yeah,
Towards the very
definitely.
end, he almost looks like him. That was not very subtle, but like I say, subtlety is not Spike Lee's strong side.
No, no. But I would also argue that like he never aims to be like it. I definitely feel like he's very much aware of the fact that he is smacking you over the head with some of these things. I think back to even the start of Damon Lindelof's Watchmen, and it opens with the Tulsa Massacre, which for many people, including myself, was probably the first time that you'd ever heard about that. And it was a very gratuitous sort of scene, and very much on the nose, like it to kind of set the theme for the rest of that show. But it was there because, well, Lindelof himself actually said like he had never heard of it, and then he read about it and he researched it some more, and he couldn't believe how this was sort of left out of so much popular culture. It just basically hadn't ever been addressed before, and it was put there then as an educational piece. And I feel like Spike Lee is just not afraid to be like that, you know, you can trust audiences, and I think he does trust that audiences are smart enough to understand these things. But I feel like he is shining a light on a lot of things that people may not have considered or seen before. And as his kind of voice and his platform kind of grows, I would say, he probably feels like it's important to him to make sure that he continues to shine like a huge light onto these issues. And I did like the addition of, I thought Delroy Lindo, he played Paul. I thought he was incredible. You know, like that scene towards the sort of latter half of the movie where he has this monologue and it's like him kind of like he's almost having like a final breakdown. He's the Trump supporter in it, but you know, again, kind of on the nose, don't get me wrong. Like, oh, look, Spike Lee's putting someone into a movie who doesn't agree with the other people, or oh, look, it's a black person that's wearing a MAGA hat. How crazy is that, right? But I don't think that it is. I think that he's addressing an issue that is important in that, like, well, first of all, like, you can't put people into boxes because of their color. You simply can't say that, like, all black people should not support Donald Trump. Nobody should, for that matter. But you can't just say that black people shouldn't support Donald Trump because they're black, right? Because people are free, and black people are free to make their own decisions. And putting Paul into the movie as a Donald Trump supporter and having him say about immigrants and stuff like that, I think is an important message to send as well, because it is saying that, like, hey, you know, there are people with varying opinions on this stuff, and we don't agree with it, but they're there, and we want to write someone who reflects that. And he was well written, and we see his sort of descent into madness throughout the movie as well. So I think his performance and the fact that he is in the movie and written the way that he is incredibly important, because I know that, like, this was a huge issue not a huge issue, but like a talking point around Kanye West, who is friends with Spike Lee, but also has, like, publicly, you know, kind of traded words with Spike Lee over the past few years, because Kanye, as notorious as he is basically saying, like, you can't tell me what to do or what to think or what to believe. Like, I am nobody's slave, and I don't mean that in the sense of, like, chains. I mean that, like, no one is going to tell me what I can and can't do because of the color of my skin. So if I want to support Donald Trump, then I can wear this Make America Great Again hat, and that no one can tell me otherwise. And while I personally don't agree with it, and I think it's sending a wrong message, I can also understand that, yeah, you are entitled to your own opinions, and for people to tell you that because you're a black man living in the US that you can't have these opinions is derogatory in my mind. So I think that Spike Lee is aware of that, and wants to address it in this film, along with many other things. I love the fact that, I don't know if you picked it up or not, I'm sure you did, when it cut back to the 4:3 framing for the sort of flashback scenes,
Yeah.
Which I said last week that I really liked with Cold War. They didn't use younger actors
That was really good, right?
to play the role, and I feel like in a way that was a little bit of a jab at Mr. Scorsese and his his
Right.
his $10 million a day budget to de-age Robert De Niro.
Maybe they meant to de-age them, but they just ran out of money.
ran out of money. I feel
No, I think that was one of the like kind of cooler things. At the beginning, it was like, what is happening? They just essentially old, but they right now in the past. But once you get the message, why is it? It's just like that. It's just a convention. You kind of forget about it. It's also their memories, so it kind of makes sense that it works this way.
Yeah, because like I think like if you think back now, even there to where we were talking about seeing like Joel Schumacher movies in when we were young, like you look at it, you look back through your memories with like the sort of lens of who you are now. Like you look back and you almost place like yourself right now back into that moment. So you are looking at you as you sit here in 2020, standing outside that movie theater, waiting for a fourth person to show up to go and see Batman. And it felt kind of like that to me, where it's like these guys are reliving this moment and they remember Chadwick Boseman as this sort of like mythical hero, and who obviously they never get to see him age. So they picture him remaining as it is, but they picture all the rest of them now as the older men. Now, it never puts too much attention on it. It just kind of there. The flashback scenes are primarily Chadwick Boseman. I find he's kind of takes care of those scenes, and he's amazing in it too. He's so charismatic. He's great. But I thought it was a really nice touch to flip to the 4:3 from the because it's Dolby Vision, ultra high def, and there's also a few times in the film where it moves from like the 16:9 to full frame as well. So like I think maybe at the start when they're in Vietnam, it's in 16:9 with your bars top and bottom, and then when they eventually reach the jungle, it opens up to kind of give you that all-encompassing feel of the like the countryside in Vietnam. So lots of really clever production and a lot of really interesting creative takes on things like having the Vietnam broadcaster. I forget her name. She was very famous, but that was a cool creative choice to put in there too.
Black GI, is it fair to serve more than the white Americans that sent you here? Nothing is more confused than to be ordered into a war to die without the faintest idea of what's going on. I dedicate this next record to the soul brothers of the 1st Infantry Divisions. Be safe.
There's a couple of things I liked and a few things I didn't. So, for example, reference to the Apocalypse Now has to be in every movie. That's kind of about Vietnam. So there is even like a big kind of like poster in the background when they are in a disco and there's Apocalypse Now font in there. There is a Ride of Valkyries, has to be, when they are, I think they are on a boat. So it was kind of fun, like just to be very conscious about the history of the cinema. I love the choice of music because Marvin Gaye's songs kind of roll through the whole film. They put emphasis on the important stuff that doesn't need to be actually said in the dialogue, but it's actually in the music. So I love it as this sort of comment. So that worked for me. At the beginning, the son of one of the characters, which is obviously like a kind of fifth wheel or third wheel, depending how you look at it, you kind of like, why is he there? But he kind of falls into the piece quite nicely towards the end. So I didn't like his presence at the beginning, but towards the end it kind of worked for me. I really like the scene on the floating market when this character plays by Delroy Lindo has this breakdown of like, someone tries to sell him chicken and he's like, he's super defensive, and you see the tensions building there. Like that was like one of the better scenes actually in the whole movie. And the, you know, couple of minor things like the kid, like one of the characters has a kid with the girl that he met back in the days. This felt like super like unnecessary, and it's just like, just leave it out. Just leave it out. So overall, for me, it's a mixed bag with the emphasis on rather a positive rather than the negative. Saying I've never seen, you know, and there are not many films about American black heroes, like who are used to be heroes, came back from the war. They deal with this stuff every day in their, you know, the people they left behind. The trauma is still there, and about like the situation of people of black people throughout the years that has not changed much, and that's a very timely stuff.
I was going to say earlier that, you know, with you can look at some of these things like this movie and kind of say, wow, did Spike Lee kind of like predict the future here? You know, like how did he make a movie that was so appropriate that would release right at the perfect time and everything? But the kind of unfortunate reality of it is that like it's in many ways it's just history repeating itself over and over again. That hey, it's not that hard to write a really good movie about the struggles that black people have faced, particularly in the US, but certainly globally, and it not feel like it's evergreen almost. You know, like I feel like someone can write a movie like this and release it in 2024, and you know, we could hopefully not, but still be asking ourselves, wow, how did they get on so accurate with what's happening here? You know, so yeah.
Yeah, his films from the 90s and 80s still feel, unfortunately, as present as they were. Like Do the Right Thing is a movie about what's happened recently. We talked about it. Do you have any other thoughts about the Five Bloods?
No, I think absolutely watch this movie. If you like war movies, you're going to love this, I think. It could be a little bit shorter, absolutely. But I had a lot of fun watching it, and I would highly recommend it to anybody.
I would not say highly recommend it, but I would say if you're curious to see what like Spike Lee has to say about the stuff that's happening and it's important to him, definitely watch that film.
I see ghosts, y'all. I see ghosts.
What happens to all of us, man?
Oh, you seen them too?
Yeah.
Dad come to you at night. Storm and Norm comes to me damn near every night. Now he talked to you like he talked to me. Come on. I don't think so.
Come on. Fist up.
Get in there, David. Get in there. Put your fist up, David. Come on. Go, you two there? Go ahead. Fist up, man.
Come on, Paul.
Let's quickly review the year so far. So I sent you a list today, which was a very extensive list of stuff that was released. And when I was reviewing like the stuff that, you know, was released in the UK, so I was just looking at the releases, UK releases, actual releases in the cinema and like TV shows. First 3 months were super rich. There's like probably 50 films every month, and then it kind of dwindles down. There is less and less good or interesting stuff. It's just like there's no films whatsoever. So did you reflect on those lists, and what do you think were your highlights of the 2020? Let's start with the movies. You tell me your choices, I'll tell you mine.
So I initially went into the list and I was like, oh my god, there is so much here, and a lot of it I have not seen, to be fair. But what I said I was going to do was I'm going to be really, really aggressive and try and pick one. But I don't think I could do it. I think I went with 2 from the movies and an honorable mention, and then 2 from the TV shows and an honorable mention. And my movies are going to go to the 2 that I recommend, highly recommend, is Jojo Rabbit. I've watched that film multiple times actually since it came out. I bought it on digital, and it's still just a delightful film to watch, I think, with a lot to say. I know you're not particularly keen on it, but I just love Taika Waititi's style. I love his sense of humor, and I thought he did a really, really great job approaching this from approaching sort of, you know, like Nazi Germany from a comedic point of view without it being really insulting, by making it about children essentially, and their involvement in the war in some fashion as well. And then I went with another war film, which I went with 1917, which, because I just thought it just was one of those movies where I was like, oh man, it was it is a movie for the cinema. Like, that's a movie that you just
100%.
love to see in the cinema. And, like, you know, even if cinemas wanted to reopen now with, you know, reduced showings and just show some older films, maybe ones that were still in before they closed, this might make the cut for it. And I think I would pay to go back, granted that face masks were a thing and social distancing. I think I would go back and see again Sam Mendes' 1917. And then my honorable mention, which is a movie that we spoke about on here, which was The Invisible Man. An honorable mention because it is the last film that I have in my Letterboxd account. Because it was the last thing that I seen in the cinema before cinemas had to close up their doors. And let me see, if I'm gonna tap here, I'm gonna say The Invisible Man's greatest strength is capturing the feeling of being watched and forcing you to feel it throughout, thanks to great cinematography and a small but very strong cast. Making the audience question the sanity of the lead character is a powerful example of victim blaming. That's what I wrote in my Letterboxd, because I try to keep my reviews like just really short. I gave it 3.5 stars, which for me is
much.
like no, but I'm quite like I'm quite tough with like when you've only got like 5 stars to give something. I try to be quite like, you know, is it really a 5-star movie or a 4-star movie? And I don't know if The Invisible Man, I don't think, was a 4-star movie. But 3.5 for me still leans into the, hey, like, definitely check this movie out. It's really, really good. If I had to give it like 3.4, then absolutely not. Garbage. Terrible. But no, I'm joking. 3.5 stars I give it. But yeah, if you're up for it, I would give The Invisible Man a watch.
So
what did you pick?
2 films you mentioned, actually, they were the Oscar contenders, right, of 2020. So they kind of like, I'm looking at my list and I'm trying to kind of think to myself, like, most of the films I have here actually were Oscar contenders for 2020, or were not, but they were released in the US in 2019. My obvious choices would probably be in like Parasite, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, Emma, The Lighthouse, A Beautiful Day in a Neighborhood, a film people are not talking about enough. It's an amazing film with Tom Hanks. And 1917. Like, these would be obvious choices. But I said, like, my favorite film of the 2020 so far has to be Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. I reviewed this film a few weeks ago with you.
Yeah.
Directed by Eliza Hittman. So I'm not going to talk more about it. Just say, find this film, watch it. It's incredible. It's a proper film that's been released 2020. Also have on my kind of top three Uncut Gems, Safdie Brothers, and Dark Waters with Mark Ruffalo, film directed by Todd Haynes. Yeah, but I think a lot of great films were released at the very beginning of the year, and then we kind of rolling through, I don't want to say like mediocre films, but films that not reach the heights, except for Eliza Hittman's film, not reach the heights for me.
Do you think The Five Bloods is... Do you think it felt more like what would have been a theatrical release as opposed to, say, Extraction, for example, which is another Netflix movie that has that sort of like... I think
so, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I feel like The Five Bloods is going to be an Oscar contender next year.
It will be, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. In some regards, I don't know, maybe not Best Picture or anything like that, but I definitely think it will be nominated for a few awards. TV shows. Let's see. For TV shows, I went with, again, 2 must-sees and a special mention. So the 2 must-sees.
Can I guess?
Go for it.
Dave.
Dave is my honorable mention.
Yeah,
Dave is my
okay. So
honorable
I'm quite curious what you're gonna say. What's gonna be your choice?
So first was The Outsider, created by Richard Price, Ben Mendelsohn, based on the Stephen King novel.
We talked about it right in one of our first episodes, right?
And yeah, it was. Anya and I pretty much binge watched this entire thing.
Episode 4. We talked about it in episode 4.
Cool. It's a brilliant show, really well put together, the classic HBO quality. I don't know if you can still find it anywhere to stream in the UK at the minute, but I would certainly keep my eye out for it. It was a very, very, very good show. If you like, kind of like horror, thriller, detective sort of stuff. Very Stephen King in a lot of ways. And then my second one went to, we both thoroughly enjoyed it, which was Devs.
Yes.
Yeah, Devs, I think, deserves an absolute must-watch. The more time that I've had to reflect on it as well, the more I would say absolutely take the time. It's still on BBC iPlayer, so if you're in the UK,
Definitely,
you can watch it.
Except for Devs, and the other choice is The Last Dance. This is a 10-part documentary series about Chicago Bulls, which I enjoy so much.
Yeah, it was great.
2 other shows I'm going to mention is Normal People, a BBC production, which I love. My girlfriends keep watching it on a loop, and she says it's even better every time she watches it. And Better Call Saul. So this is penultimate series of Better Call Saul, which this is the only TV show I would be sitting and waiting for the next episode for a week, because they release it like on a weekly basis, and it's just better and better and better. And the last series was phenomenal. And the series that started probably the idea was to show the story of this kind of dodgy lawyer, now turned into something completely different. So many characters. It's so well done. It's just beyond, like, for me, it surpasses TV, what TV is actually, like a definition of TV. It's almost like a book, like a big story. You just want to go with the characters. I love Better Call Saul. I think this is one of the TV series that people are not talking about. I think in 10 years when we be reflecting on it, people will say, do you remember Breaking Bad? Yeah, this is the show that started the Better Call Saul TV series. So these are my choices. I will list our choices in the show notes if you want to go back to them and look up them and watch them. We would definitely recommend to watch a lot of stuff we actually reviewed in the past. That will be it for today. Conor, thank you for this very short episode, as usual. Thank you for listening. Thank you for staying with us. We do this because we love talking about movies, but we want to get you involved in the show. If you want to tweet to us at BlockbustersPod, at RDefault, or at Design Corner, please do. Please let us know what are your favorite films, TV shows of the last 6 months. We're more than happy to read them out next week with your comments. You can find us also Letterboxd. Conor has his profile that's not been updated, but you still can see what he watched. CNRBYL, and my profile is alive. I add stuff all the time. It's Rado with X at the end. Our music is by Scott Holmes, and you can find more of his work at scottholmesmusic.com. Our podcast is available on Apple Podcast, Overcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, Castbox, Pocket Casts, CD, Blu-ray, DVD, and tape. However you want it, we will get it for you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening. Subscribe and recommend our rants to your friends, enemies. Give us a rating. We all deserve a rating. Hopefully it's a 5-star rating. Conor, till the next week, thank you.
Thank you. See you later.
Stay safe. Bye bye.
And like that, he's gone.
Ba, ba, ba.